After 10 incredible years together, I never imagined that my wife Hannah would ask for an open marriage. We had built a beautiful life, Hannah thriving in her marketing career and me steadily working toward my dream of becoming a comic book artist. I always believed our love was strong, intense, and passionate. But one evening, everything changed. Hannah came home from work looking different. There was something off about her energy. Over dinner, she took a deep breath and said, "Aaron, I've been thinking a lot and I want an open marriage." My fork clinked against the plate. "What? Why?" I stammered, completely caught off guard. "I miss the excitement of being chased by men," she replied calmly. "Excitement? You want to throw away our marriage for excitement?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "You're not a teenager anymore, Hannah." "Don't be so old-fashioned, Aaron," she said dismissively. "I'm not throwing anything away. All I'm asking is for you to accept the idea of me being with other men. You can be with others too if you want." I scoffed. "You're seriously asking me for that just for excitement?" She went on to explain that she missed feeling wanted and validated, that she craved the freedom to meet other men, to feel empowered, and to explore a more progressive way of living. She tried to convince me that if I truly loved her, I wouldn't feel threatened or insecure. "You should trust me," she added. "You should be secure enough to let me do this." I sat there, stunned. Was this really my wife talking? I leaned forward, folding my hands together. "You know," I began, keeping my tone steady despite the storm of emotions inside me, "I've watched a lot of YouTube videos about wives who ask their husbands for open marriages." Hannah's eyes flickered, just for a second, like she was waiting for something. I stared at her, letting the pause stretch, making it as uncomfortable as possible. "So, who is it, Hannah? Who's the other guy?" Her face stiffened. "No one, Aaron. How could you even think that?" she protested. "How dare you suggest such a thing? Then why are you asking to sleep with other men?" I shot back, frustration creeping into my voice. We went back and forth. She kept denying any involvement with someone else, yet still pushed for an open marriage, desperately trying to sell me on its benefits. Finally, I had enough. "Look," I said firmly, "my answer is no. And now you've given me a serious reason to consider divorce." I paused, recalling the countless posts and videos I had seen online. The consensus was always the same. The moment your wife brings up an open marriage, divorce her. I looked at Hannah, disappointment and disgust washing over me. If this is where we're at, then maybe we're already done. Her face drained of color. Her eyes filled with terror. "Aaron, no. Please, no. We can talk about this. I didn't mean it. I love you. I don't want to lose you. I was just curious." Her voice trembled with desperation. I shook my head, stood up, and grabbed my plate of unfinished food, my appetite completely gone. I dumped it in the trash, threw my dishes in the sink, and grabbed my wallet, keys, and jacket before walking out, leaving her in stunned silence. For the next few days, Hannah was unusually quiet. A stark contrast to the confident, argumentative woman who had first proposed the idea. Maybe I thought my clear stance, along with the very real possibility of divorce, had made her reconsider. But that hope shattered one night when she walked into the living room, her expression tense. "Aaron, I've been thinking more about this," she said, hesitation in her voice. "I've been reading studies on polyamory and open relationships." She nodded to herself as if trying to convince herself this was the right path. Then, without waiting for my response, she let it all spill out. "I need to be upfront with you if we're going to move forward," Hannah began, sitting across from me on the couch. Her hands were tightly clasped in her lap, her knuckles white, a clear sign of her nerves. "But please understand, I'm doing this to show you that there's nothing to fear in an open marriage. Nothing to worry about as long as we're honest and open with each other. I know I didn't approach this the right way at first." I shifted uncomfortably, meeting her gaze. "I'm listening," I said quietly, bracing myself for what was coming. She took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling as though preparing for a storm. There's someone at work. His name is Jaden. We've been seeing each other. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Seeing each other, I repeated slowly, my voice cold and deliberate. You mean you've been sleeping with him? She nodded, her eyes darting away from mine. It's not just physical, Aaron, she admitted, voice trembling. He makes me feel alive again. Wanted. Like I'm young and free. I stared at her, the woman I had loved for over 10 years, and realized I didn't recognize her at all. And you admit you have feelings for him? A bitter, hollow laugh escaped me. So this is why you want an open marriage, I said, my voice thick with resentment. To justify your affair. No. It's not like that, she snapped defensively, her tone sharp. I'm being honest with you. Like I said, I don't want to lose you. I love you. I thought we could make this work. She took a deep breath, her expression desperate. An open marriage is progressive, Aaron. It's about being open-minded, embracing new experiences. It's not about betrayal. Progressive. I spat the word like poison. You think cheating on me and calling it some enlightened lifestyle choice is progressive? That's rich, Hannah, and you know it. Her jaw tightened, her eyes flashing with defiance. And your refusal to even consider it? You're so set in your ways, so conservative, so closed-minded. Suffocating, Aaron. And yes, I hate it. I stood abruptly, my legs restless. You hate it, I repeated, my voice rising. You hate that I valued our marriage? That I believed in the vows we made? That I trusted you? I hate that you're unwilling to grow, she shot back, standing to face me. Marriage doesn't have to mean locking ourselves into some outdated, oppressive ideal. I want more out of life, Aaron. I want to feel alive, and Jaden gives me that. I let out another bitter laugh, the sound empty and harsh. And what about me, Hannah? I asked, my voice sharp with anger. What do I get out of this progressive arrangement? The privilege of sitting at home while you sleep with your coworker? She flinched, guilt flickering across her face. It was clear, she hadn't even considered whether I might engage with other women in this so-called agreement. Tentatively, she added. Well, you could see other women too if you wanted. It doesn't have to be one-sided. I let out a humorless chuckle, shaking my head. Such hypocrisy, I muttered. You suggest an open marriage, but you only thought about yourself. And now, after betraying me, you talk about us, as if this was ever about us. When the truth is, you've already left me behind. I don't want other women, Hannah. I exhaled, my voice steady but filled with exhaustion. I wanted my wife, the woman I thought I married. But it seems she's disappeared. For a moment, her expression softened, a flicker of guilt crossing her face. But then, as if shaking off the emotion, she straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and met my gaze with cold resolve. I won't apologize for wanting more, Aaron. And if you can't handle that, maybe you're right. Maybe this marriage isn't going to work. Her words landed with a suffocating finality, pressing down on my chest. But then something strange happened, the weight shifted. Instead of pain, I felt something else entirely. Relief. Freedom. I looked at her, the stranger who wore my wife's face, and let the wave of sadness and anger wash over me one last time before exhaling it away. You're right, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. It isn't. I paused, then added, I'll talk to a lawyer tomorrow. We'll sort out the divorce. The intervention. Over the next few weeks, as I moved my things into the guest room, I thought the argument had ended. I was wrong. Hannah wasn't about to let me go so easily. She enlisted her mother, Iris, her sister, Ashley, and her friends, Haley and Allison. Coordinated ambush. One afternoon, as I sat at the dining room table eating a burger and watching YouTube videos, they stormed in. Iris took charge, gracefully sitting across from me. Aaron, sweetie, we need to talk about this, she began, her voice smooth but firm. I set my food aside, crossing my arms as I glared at them. Hannah sat next to her mother, while Ashley, Haley, and Allison stood behind them like a panel of judges. Tension in the room thickened. Iris spoke first. "Aaron, listen, really listen. Relationships don't have to be rigid and oppressive. Fickle non-monogamy can be empowering for both partners. You need to open your eyes." I raised an eyebrow. "Empowering? Is that what we're calling betrayal now?" Ashley rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on, Aaron. This isn't betrayal, it's about honesty. Hannah was brave enough to tell you what she wants. That takes courage. Do you know how many women just stay silent, letting their resentment grow?" I met her gaze, my voice calm but icy. "Do you really think I should applaud her for having an affair and then trying to pass it off as some kind of progressive philosophy?" "Of course she didn't handle it perfectly," Iris admitted. "But she's trying to include you in her journey. That's what ethical non-monogamy is about: honesty, communication, and mutual respect. If you could just get past your control issues and stop being so insecure." My patience snapped. "My insecurities?" I cut her off, my temper flaring. "You mean my refusal to let my wife turn our marriage into a circus just so she can feel desirable again? Yeah, I guess I'm insecure about that." "That's exactly what we mean," Allison chimed in, leaning forward, resting a hand on the back of Hannah's chair. Her eyes locked onto mine with fierce determination. "You're terrified of change. You're clinging to this outdated view of marriage because you're scared you won't measure up to someone like Jaden. It's not a good look, Aaron. It's honestly pathetic." My jaw tightened, fists clenching. "I don't give a damn about measuring up to Jaden," I shot back. "But you're right, I am secure in knowing what I want. Unlike all of you, I don't need to rewrite the rules just because commitment suddenly feels inconvenient." Then Allison smirked. "You're hiding behind your beliefs because deep down you know you're inadequate. You know Hannah found someone who satisfies her better than you ever could." A sharp glare from Hannah. "Stop," she mouthed at Allison. But it was too late. The damage was done. The moment they walked in and tried to corner me, the last of my patience had disappeared. I laughed, a bitter, sour sound. "You know what?" I said, jabbing my finger at the table. "I don't give a damn anymore. Not about her. Not about him. And I sure as hell don't care about you." Silence. I stood up, pushing my chair back, and walked away. This conversation was over, but I saw this marriage for what it was, dead. Frustrated, I threw my hands up. And as for my values? Yes, this has everything to do with them. You don't marry someone knowing their stance on something as fundamental as monogamy and then suddenly spring a so-called change on them. It goes against everything I stand for. One of them started to speak, but I held up my hand. "I don't care what label you all want to slap on this. Call it whatever you want. But I'll say this is about trust too. And Hannah destroyed that trust the moment she decided to sleep with someone else behind my back." Hannah, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. "I made a mistake, Aaron, but I'm trying to fix it. I want us to grow together. This could make us stronger if you just stop feeding your fragile ego and being so stubborn and conservative." I laughed bitterly. "Stronger? You really think bringing other people into our marriage is going to make us stronger? That's delusional." "It's not delusional," Ashley snapped. "Polyfidelity is a legitimate relationship structure. It's about creating a network of love and support while maintaining romantic and sexual connections within agreed-upon boundaries. If you'd let go of your fragile ego, like Hannah said, you'd actually learn what it's about. It's not just about sex." I scoffed. "Let's call it what it really is, a way to sleep around without facing consequences." Haley shook her head, looking at me in frustration. "You're so closed-minded. If you just let go of your toxic jealousy, you'd see how liberating this could be. Hannah is offering you honesty. She's trying to build something new with you, but you're too afraid to step out of your comfort zone, too afraid to be a real man. A progressive man. I stood up, my voice steady. I'm not afraid. I just have standards. I believe in commitment, in loyalty, in honoring the vows we took. I believe in monogamy. That makes me conservative, fine. I'll wear that label proudly. But don't stand here and tell me I'm wrong for wanting a marriage that isn't a joke. Allison crossed her arms, her tone filled with disdain. You're so wrapped up in your fragile masculinity that you can't even see this for what it is, a chance to grow, to evolve. You're holding Hannah back because you're too insecure to handle the idea of her being happy with someone else. I narrowed my eyes. Holding her back? I let out a cold chuckle. I don't care anymore. If she wants to walk out that door and spread her legs for Jaden or whoever else, that's on her. She's the one who cheated. She's the one who broke our vows. She's a 304 to me now. She's for the streets. I glanced at the women surrounding her. And now she's trying to gaslight me. And you're all helping her. You're trying to make me think I'm the problem. I pointed to the door. Take your nonsense and leave. I've tolerated this long enough. I'm done. Get out. The room fell silent. Hannah's face flushed with frustration. She crossed her arms, leaning back in her chair, her eyes narrowing at me. Aaron, stop being so disrespectful just because you're angry. I'm your wife. I cut her off with a dark laugh. Not anymore. She blinked in disbelief. I haven't seen any divorce papers yet. Oh, you will. Her expression twisted. You're impossible, Aaron. You're so set in your ways that you can't even try to see things from another angle. You'd rather throw away everything we've built than try to make this work. Silence settled over the room. One by one, the women glared at me, but they didn't speak again. They had come expecting to pressure me, to make me bend. But they were beginning to realize their attempt to gang up on me wasn't working. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door. I'll let my lawyer handle the rest. Good luck with your so-called empowerment. You're going to need it. With that, I walked out, leaving them in stunned silence. Despite that final argument, I didn't file for divorce right away. This, of course, gave Hannah a false sense of hope, a temporary feeling of security. She, her family, and her friends continued to bombard me with pleas to stay in the marriage, convinced that my delay meant I wasn't reconsidering. They just didn't realize I was stalling. Behind the scenes, I had hired a private investigator, determined to gather concrete proof that Hannah was already sleeping with Jaden, just in case she tried to backtrack during the divorce. Took a few weeks. After our argument about an open marriage, Hannah was smart enough to avoid sneaking off with Jaden right away. But it was clear she couldn't control her emotions or her desires. Eventually, she got careless. And when she did, she was caught red-handed. Proof came in crystal clear. Anger flared up inside me again, but I let it fade. Instead, I focused on things I enjoyed. Either way, it didn't matter. The woman I had loved, the wife I once had, was gone. Person standing in front of me now, spouting progressive nonsense while sneaking around with a coworker, was a stranger. A deceitful, manipulative stranger at that. As soon as I received the investigator's report, I filed for divorce. It was the only way to escape this toxic situation and start healing. I had to protect myself. A line had been crossed and there was no going back. Of course, I didn't walk away empty-handed. I might have anonymously sent the report from the PI to her company, just to let her know that her actions had consequences. To anyone listening, let this be a lesson. Don't let people come along with foolish ideologies and try to bully you into accepting them. If you have your own values, your own traditions, stand firm in them. If those values are worth standing for, then fight for them. Otherwise, you risk losing yourself. Hi. This is Hannah. I know you all probably hate me by now, but I just wanted to offer some closure. Back then, I honestly didn't think Aaron would go through with it. Sure, he talked about divorce, threatened it even, but after that last fight with my mom, sister, and friends, he still stuck around. A part of me thought he was bluffing. That eventually, he'd cool off and we'd figure out a way to move forward. But when the divorce papers arrived, I felt it. I knew he was serious. And worse, he wasn't finished with me. 2 weeks after I signed the divorce papers, I was called into a meeting with HR. Jaden was there too, looking nervous, avoiding my gaze. My heart sank the moment I saw him. The HR manager's expression was grave as she explained that a complaint had been filed against me, with evidence. Photos, videos, timestamps, even text messages. How did they get my texts? It was all there. Aaron had reported us. It had to be him. I tried to downplay it. Tried to minimize everything. Yes, I even tried to play the victim card, leaning on the idea of sisterhood. And, in my desperation, I threw Jaden under the bus. I claimed he had taken advantage of me. But it was too late. Company had a strict zero-tolerance policy regarding relationships between supervisors and subordinates. And the fact that I had never once come forward with a sexual assault claim, while the evidence clearly showed I had willingly participated, left the HR manager unconvinced. So much for sisterhood. By the end of the week, both Jaden and I were out of a job. I felt ashamed for trying to shift the blame onto him. But losing my career wasn't even the worst of it. The worst part came later. Jaden, the man I had risked everything for, told me he couldn't handle the fallout. He said it was over. Pearl. He was starting to sound just like Aaron. But at that point, I had to admit, he was right. When things were at risk, I tried to blame him. I tried to ruin his life. If he had stayed, I would have lost respect for him. I would have seen him as weak, someone I could throw under the bus to save myself. I would have used him as a safety net until I found someone else I deemed worthy of my time. Yeah, I know. You're all probably surprised that I'm admitting this. But it's the truth. It's what I thought at the time. Either way, Jaden ended things with me face to face and disappeared, just as quickly as he had come into my life. In the months that followed, I tried to move on. But nothing stuck. The men I dated were either put off by my baggage or only looking for something casual. No one wanted to build a life with a woman who had burned her marriage and career to the ground in one fell swoop. And so I was left alone, to confront the cold, bitter reality of my choices. Late at night, when loneliness was at its worst, I'd think about Aaron, the life we had built together, and how I had thrown it all away. Aaron wasn't perfect, but he loved me. Deeply. Completely. And I let that slip away. For what? A fleeting thrill? A fantasy of freedom that had turned into a nightmare? Aaron was moving on now. I had heard through mutual friends that he was doing well, focusing on his art and even starting to date again. He deserved happiness. And I knew I had no one to blame but myself for not being a part of it. The woman who destroyed our marriage wasn't the real me. But it was too late to undo the damage. Remember this, ladies. The grass isn't always greener. You have to put in the hard work to nurture a marriage. There's no quick fix. If you have a good man at home, keep him. And no, I don't mean trying an open marriage. That certainly didn't work out for me.